All right, so we are here back in the kitchen. We are going to be demonstrating simple roast chicken today, demonstrating the roasting method. I've got my chicken right here, and I wanted to demonstrate how to prep it out of the package once you get it from the grocery store or market, wherever. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll move over to the oven and show you how to season it up, and we'll get it in there. So what you want to do first, I've got, again, my high-sided pan right here, just to kind of catch all the juices. Normally I do this in the sink, but if you don't have your sink available and you can have a pan like this, I don't recommend doing it on a cutting board because this is going to have a lot of juice in it, and so we want to try to catch all that. We don't want to spread salmonella, obviously. So what I'm going to do is start by opening up the package. I've got my fillet knife here, my good sharp knife. And again, I'm being very careful because the juice is already running out of this. So I'm just going to continue to open this up. You can see that juice coming out right there. These packages on these chickens, they're pretty tight. I'm just going to kind of pull this down, drain all that liquid out of there. I'm just going to set that in the sink. Now, a lot of times chickens like this will have what they call the giblets in them, maybe in a type of package. These are just loose. You want to reach inside the cavity. You know, you're going to have to get your hands inside this bird. So we've got the liver and the gizzard. And that's all that seems to be in this one. Now you can save these. Some people, I'm from the South, and a lot of people eat fried livers, fried gizzards. Ground chicken livers are used a lot in other dishes. Dirty rice, for example, which is a Cajun dish, uses ground chicken liver. Other things use it. It's very flavorful, but if you don't like it, you don't want to use it, just discard it, throw it away. So what I'm going to do now is, again, you can see all the liquid that's in this pan right here. I'm going to drain that. I'm just going to dump that right down the sink. Make sure we get everything out from the inside of the chicken. All right, so I'm going to set that back in the pan, and I'm going to wash my hands as well as my knife. And then we'll move back over to the stove area and season this up and get it in the oven. All right, so we've got our chicken all cleaned up and ready to go. We're over here at the stove. I've got my oven preheated to 450 degrees. You want to make sure you do that. If you have a convection oven, you want to back that down to 425. Remember what we talked about last time, that convection is where the heat is transferred through a stirring of the medium, either water or, in the case of an oven, a fan that's built in there, so it stirs the air. So it actually cooks a little hotter than just a regular conventional oven that just is a chamber that holds the heat. So 450 or 425 if you're using a convection oven. Now for this chicken recipe, it's very simple, not a whole lot of ingredients. We're going to need some vegetable oil, a couple of tablespoons of that, some salt, some fresh ground black pepper, some fresh thyme. I've got some thyme. I've already pulled the leaves off the stem here. Most grocery stores carry fresh thyme in their produce section. I picked this directly from my herb garden this morning. You can see the fresh stems right there. My herbs are starting to come back after the winter. I've got mint growing, I've got thyme, I've got some rosemary out there. If you can do an herb garden at your home, highly recommend it, especially for some of those basic herbs right there. Fresh is so much better than dried. Of course, if you can't get fresh, then dried is absolutely okay. You can find that usually in the spice section in your grocery store. You can find dried thyme leaves and lots of other dried herbs, but fresh is really good. So we're going to use fresh this morning. We've got some butter, which we'll get to in just a minute here. And I've also got, trying to get everything in the camera here, I've also got a couple of pieces of cotton twine. This came off of a roll. Again, you can find that in your grocery stores or in your other stores in the section that sells kitchen items, kitchen utensils, things like that. You can find some cotton twine. It's got to be cotton. Do not use nylon or any synthetic because it can melt, especially in a high temp oven, but cotton will be fine. we're going to use that. I've already cut a couple of pieces, 2 pieces that are about 18 inches long each. We're going to use these to tie up the chicken. You want to go ahead and cut those ahead of time because you don't want to have to stop and wash your hands after handling the chicken because you don't want to cross-contaminate the other part of your string. So I've already got that cut. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a half a stick of butter, about 4 tablespoons of softened butter, room temperature, and we're going to put it in this bowl right over here. And then we're going to add about a teaspoon each, and let me grab my teaspoon measure. About a teaspoon each of salt. I'm using Himalayan pink salt. You can use whatever salt you've got on hand. And again, some fresh ground black pepper. I grind my pepper fresh in a coffee grinder that I use for grinding spices, and I don't have a whole lot left here, so we're going to sprinkle that in there. And then we're going to put about a teaspoon of our thyme leaves in there. I'm going to use just a regular fork. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mash all this up together with that softened butter. And I'm making what's called a compound butter. A compound butter is where you take things, herbs, spices, even some finely minced vegetables, and you mix them in with some softened butter. Then what you can do is you can pipe that out using like a decorating tip into shapes, or you can roll it in some parchment paper into like a cylinder shape, and then refrigerate that and let it harden back up. And you can use that as a topping on meats, things like that. Or what I'm going to do with this right now is we're going to rub it all in and over our chicken as a way to season it. The butter is going to help keep it moist and juicy, give it some flavor there. Act also as a fat, because butter is mainly fat with some milk solids in it. So this will be a fat that the chicken can cook in. Before I start putting that on the chicken though, what I want to do is I've got a heavy cast iron pan right here. So this is what we're going to cook our chicken in. So you want to use a heavy skillet cast iron pan. If you don't have one of these, just a small roasting pan, just really kind of big enough for your chicken to fit in. You don't want a huge like turkey roaster or something like that. So we're going to heat this up over about medium heat. Get that pan good and hot. Now again, what we're going to do is we're just going to use our hands here, and we're going to take this butter mixture, this compound butter, and we're going to start rubbing it. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to lift the skin up. You may have to kind of separate the little membrane. Let me put this down so you can see. Little membrane that holds the skin onto the breast of the bird right there. Try not to tear the skin. We don't want any holes in it if at all possible. Just kind of run your finger up in there. Now I'm going to take my butter on my fork and I'm going to put that in there. You know, I'm just going to use my hands, get dirty here. Again, not really dirty, but I'm going to put this butter, and again, I'm going in between the skin and the meat of the bird here, the chicken, leaving some of this butter mixture. And then if it doesn't really spread around well, which you probably won't because this chicken is cold and damp, I'm just going to kind of press around right here to flatten out all that butter. I'll take some more of that. Flip it over and do the same thing back here. I'm going to pull the skin away from the bird. Let's get your finger up in there. And again, put some of this butter mixture up in there. This seasoned herb butter basically is what this is. And what this is going to do is this chicken is cooking. It's going to kind of marinate that meat. Impart some nice, good flavors in there. All right. Get the rest of this seasoned butter, and again, I'm just going to kind of dab it around on the outside. Again, leaving some little bits. Get this all over there. The warmth from your hand, if you're doing this with your hand, which you need to be, will help melt this butter some more and get it on there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean my fingers off here. I'm going to put the rest of this butter just right there on top, and right before we get ready to put the chicken in the pan, and put that down in the pan. I'm going to wash my hands real quick, and then we're going to put a little more salt and pepper on the outside of the bird, then we'll get it in the pan. All right, so I've washed my hands, and now what we're going to do is we're going to, again, sprinkle a little more salt and pepper all around this chicken. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these fresh sprigs of thyme that I didn't pick the leaves off of, and I'm going to put them right inside the cavity of the chicken, right there. That'll give it some nice aromatic flavor as we are cooking it. All right, now I'm going to take about a teaspoon of cooking oil. That in my pan there, and my pan is already good and hot. I can see it bubbling there. See, it's kind of smoking a little too. And again, I want to take this little bit of butter, herb butter there, put it down there. You can hear that sizzle. I'm going to move this so you can see what I'm doing. And I'm just going to, oh, before I do that, I almost forgot one very important step. So let me turn this down. Again, this happens sometimes when you're cooking. The string. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the string. We want to tie up the chicken. The reason we're tying it up, not because we don't want it to escape, but we want the wings and the legs to be bound up next to the body, because if they're not, they will cook quicker than the rest of the bird, and then they'll get dry and not tasty. So we're going to just tie them off, just a simple little knot to keep them tucked in there. Do the same thing with the legs. We're going to take around the bottom of the legs right here. And just cinch those up. Again, simple little knot, and you can just leave that string hanging if you want. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this bird, drain off some of that juice that's come out of there, and put it right there on the pan. All right. You hear that sizzle? You can already smell some of that thyme cooking and whatnot. It smells delicious. So now very carefully, because my pan is hot, I'm going to take it off the stove. I'm going to put it in my oven. All right, now for the fun part, we wait. That chicken's going to take at least an hour to cook. And what I'm going to do is about every 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to take the pan and I'm going to rotate it 180 degrees. Just because sometimes ovens, even convection ovens, can get hot spots. And so you want to make sure that you're letting your chicken cook evenly. So I'll come back and check it every so often, and in about an hour or so, we'll come back and finish it off. All right, so it's actually been almost an hour and a half, maybe about an hour and 20 minutes. I've been rotating the chicken that's in the oven, I've been checking the temperature on it, and it is should be ready by now. So we're going to pull it out and see how it looks. By the way, it smells absolutely amazing in here. If you do this dish at home, you're going to make your house smell wonderful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my instant read thermometer, and I highly recommend that you get one of these. Again, this I'll show you right there. It has this is the air temperature. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stick this into the fattest part of the breast. I'm going to go in deep, but I'm not going to try to touch bone, because that'll mess up the reading. So put it into the thickest part of the breast right there, and we'll see that it is reading 167. And remember, we said at 165 salmonella is killed, so we're good on our temperature for this chicken. I'm just going to check it on this side just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that it is done. Yeah, this is reading 178, 180, so we're good. Now, we're not going to cut it just yet. Next thing we're going to do is I save some of these thyme leaves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sprinkle them right there in that oil. They're sizzling. I don't know if you can see it on the video, but you can for sure hear it. Then what we're going to do is we're going to take a big spoon, and we're going to take some of that fresh thyme and oil. We're going to baste the outside of this chicken for just a couple of minutes. Let me move this out of the way there so I don't get... And again, once that thyme hit that hot oil, that butter, and some of the fat that it cooked out of the chicken, it just started smelling even more amazing. Oh, this smells delicious. We just want to baste it just a bit there. Now that we've got this out of the oven, this is going to start to cool. However, we want it to start cooling down to where it's not still cooking. Believe it or not, this chicken is still cooking. It's what we call carryover cooking. When you take something out of an oven, when you take it off of a grill, even when you turn the heat off on your stove, it's still going to continue to cook. And what we want for the meat, especially when you're cooking meats, is we want to let this do what is known as resting. So we're going to let this bird rest for about 10 or 15 minutes. And what that's going to do, number one, it's going to slowly stop cooking. And then as it begins to cool down a little bit, the juices that are hot inside there will start to go back into the meat. One mistake that a lot of people make is they would take this out, even though it looks delicious. They take this out of the oven and immediately start cutting it. Well, if you've ever done that, you've seen that a lot of juice comes out of there, and that can make your chicken dry. In addition to overcooking it, cutting it right out of the oven can make it dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to let this rest for several minutes, like I said, about 10 or 15 minutes. Let it start to cool down. Let those juices start absorbing back into the meat. That's going to make it tender. It's going to make it juicy. And then we'll cut it and serve it. All right, so it's been about 15 minutes. We've let our chicken rest here. I've basted it some more. And now what we're going to do is we're going to actually cut into it. There's a couple ways you can do this. You can use a knife. I prefer to use what are known as kitchen shears. These are scissors that are designed for cutting food, especially through things like cooked chicken bone and whatnot. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the string that we use to tie the legs and the wings together. I'm just going to use my scissors here because this is still pretty warm. I don't want to burn myself. Cut that off. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention, if you don't have an instant read thermometer, one way that you can tell if the chicken is done, and you would need to be careful with this, and you might want to use some tongs, but when you take it out to check it, you can kind of start to twist the leg there, and if it feels very loose, like it's coming off of the chicken there, then you know that it's done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these kitchen shears and I'm going to cut right through the middle of the breastbone here. And then I'm going to separate this into quarters. So I'm going to cut through this little piece of skin that's between the breast and the leg there. I'm going to gently and carefully. And this wing is coming off, so again, that's another sign that this is done. I'm going to kind of turn this over, cut through the back part there, and up the side. Again, that wing just fell right off. Now I've got a plate over here. I've got some green beans and a piece of boiled corn on the cob. And here is our roast chicken. Again, simple dish, very delicious. If you cook this, again, your house is going to smell amazing, especially if you can use that fresh thyme. And this is going to be delicious. So hope you enjoyed this. If you want to cook it again, make sure you submit some pictures and enjoy. Bon appetit.